My phone screen lit up with a family group chat notification signaling the absolute end of our relationship. My name is Diana, 32 years old, living a life completely overshadowed by my family's relentless demands. I stared at the bright display, reading a text message from my mother explicitly banning me by saying, "Don't come tonight. Tonight is your brother's future-in-law's family meeting." Before I could even process the humiliation of being excluded from a major family event, my father immediately added his own mocking text claiming, "We don't want you ruining the evening." Instead of reacting with anger or crying over their cruel words, I swallowed all my deep resentment. I locked the screen to shut out their toxic noise after typing a very brief reply, "I understand." Exactly 1 week after that heavy silence, my mother had the audacity to call me with an outrageous financial demand. She acted as if nothing happened while ordering me to fund a lavish party for the exact same people who were shielded from my presence. Her voice sounded entirely casual when she demanded, "Sweetheart, I need $15,000 for your brother's wedding. Transfer it right away, okay?" I took a very deep breath to extinguish the last remaining spark of my patience before delivering my final response. "You get absolutely nothing." Have you ever been deeply betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Tell me your own story in the comments section below, because I truly want to read it. Welcome back to Revenge Mode, where we share stories of individuals turning their deep pain into ultimate wisdom. This landscape design company in Orlando is the result of years I traded in sweat and personal loans to save my family from bankruptcy. Instead of revealing my true ownership status to the public, my parents intentionally built my brother Craig up as the official face of the family. He frequently attended high-profile networking events and posed for local business magazines, while I quietly controlled all the financial operations from a small back office. They desperately wanted the local business community to believe he was a successful entrepreneur leading a highly profitable enterprise. The reality was that his extravagant lifestyle was entirely funded by my credit lines, while he possessed absolutely no legal authority over the company assets. People often wonder why anyone would tolerate such a heavily unbalanced dynamic for so many years without fighting back. The truth is rooted in immense psychological pressure stemming from my childhood, and a sacred promise I made to my grandfather before he passed away. I swore to him that I would keep this specific piece of commercial land intact and protect the family legacy from complete financial ruin. Mom and Dad continuously manipulated that deep sense of loyalty by constantly reminding me that family must always come first, regardless of personal sacrifices. I convinced myself for a very long time that carrying this heavy, invisible burden was my fundamental duty as a daughter. The arrival of his fiancée Natasha completely shattered whatever fragile peace I had managed to construct within that toxic environment. She came from an upper-middle-class background and possessed a distinct talent for delivering highly sophisticated insults disguised as casual remarks. Natasha placed an enormous value on social status and immediately categorized everyone around her based on their outward appearance and perceived wealth. Because my parents deliberately hid my executive role to protect my brother's fragile ego, she naturally assumed I was nothing more than a low-level landscape laborer struggling to make ends meet. Her condescending attitude reached an intolerable peak during a busy Friday afternoon when she visited the main nursery to select floral arrangements for their upcoming engagement party. I was wearing my standard work clothes while inspecting a newly delivered shipment of expensive imported soil near the loading dock. Natasha walked right past the administrative staff and casually signaled for me to approach her vehicle without a single ounce of basic courtesy. She explicitly ordered me to carry several heavy decorative ceramic pots from the display area directly into the trunk of her luxury SUV. After I silently finished loading the heavy merchandise into her vehicle, she actually pulled a wrinkled $5 bill from her designer purse. She forced the cash directly into my dirty hands while offering a deeply patronizing smile meant to put a working-class servant in her place. The most devastating aspect of that entire humiliating interaction was not the wealthy woman treating me like hired help. Mom and Dad were standing just a few feet away, reviewing some vendor contracts when the entire exchange took place. I looked directly at them, expecting at least a minimal intervention to clarify my actual position within my own company. Instead of defending me, they consciously chose to turn their heads away and remained completely silent to maintain the elaborate illusion they had built. They actively tolerated my public degradation simply because exposing my true status would completely destroy the fake image of success they carefully crafted for my brother. That exact moment of absolute betrayal finally shattered the heavy chains of obligation I had carried for my grandfather. I suddenly realized that my endless financial sacrifices were not preserving a family legacy, but merely funding a parasitic delusion. I quietly walked back into the administrative office knowing exactly what I needed to do next. That evening, right after I explicitly refused to transfer the $15,000, my phone began ringing continuously with severe threats from my family. Dad did not bother using any polite requests or gentle persuasion when I finally decided to answer the aggressive incoming call. He immediately launched into a vicious verbal attack focused entirely on the potential destruction of our local social standing within the Orlando business community. He raised his voice to an intimidating volume while delivering a calculated ultimatum designed to force my absolute financial compliance. He completely ignored the fact that he was demanding my hard-earned money for a party I was explicitly forbidden from attending. He insisted that failing to secure the luxury restaurant deposit would instantly expose their elaborate lies to Natasha and her wealthy relatives. He yelled fiercely through the receiver without showing any remorse for his actions. Craig already bragged to the bride's family about covering the entire wedding cost entirely on his own. If you do not pay this exact amount right now, this whole family will be completely humiliated in front of the in-laws. Before I could formulate a logical response to his absurd financial demand, Mom snatched the device away to employ her favorite psychological weapon. She shifted the narrative by reciting a familiar litany regarding her immense sacrifices during my early childhood. She spoke with a deliberately trembling voice, attempting to induce massive guilt by listing the physical toll of raising a supposedly ungrateful daughter. She aggressively accused me of being selfish, while claiming my financial stubbornness was causing Craig unendurable mental stress before his wedding. She painted a twisted picture where my refusal to fund his lavish lifestyle was an act of profound betrayal against our own shared blood. She even dared to suggest taking out a personal loan to ensure the upcoming ceremony remained absolutely flawless. According to her deeply flawed logic, my duty was to remain in the shadows while ensuring her favorite son looked like a brilliant success. My best friend Vicky was sitting right next to me on the living room sofa listening to the entire hostile conversation through the speakerphone. She works as an independent accountant who previously audited the landscape company finances during a particularly complicated tax season 2 years ago. Vicky possesses an analytical mind trained to look exclusively at objective numbers rather than getting tangled in emotional family dynamics. She maintained a perfectly neutral expression while hearing my parents frantically attempt to extract another massive sum of money from my personal banking accounts. Having reviewed the actual corporate ledgers, she knew exactly how many times I had silently covered massive credit card bills generated by my brother. Her presence in my living room provided an invaluable anchor of sanity against the overwhelming tide of their coordinated psychological warfare. After enduring several more minutes of their toxic guilt trips, Vicky leaned forward to offer her highly objective professional financial perspective. She spoke with absolute clarity to validate my difficult decision to cut them off entirely. You absolutely do not owe your family the continuation of this completely fabricated illusion of wealth. On the official corporate accounting books, he is nothing but a massive black hole continuously sucking money out of the company. Hearing an external expert articulate the exact reality of my abusive situation finally severed the last remaining thread of my misplaced familial guilt. I suddenly understood clearly that surrendering to their endless financial extortion would only guarantee my own eventual bankruptcy and the loss of my business. There was absolutely no scenario where my constant sacrifices would ever earn their genuine respect or basic human decency. I firmly pressed the red button to terminate the active call without offering them another single word of useless justification. I immediately blocked their numbers to completely extinguish every remaining avenue of their toxic moral manipulation before preparing my next defensive move. Exactly at 9 o'clock on the following Monday morning, I walked into the professional office of my lawyer, Samuel, carrying the complete corporate registration files. I sat directly across his heavy mahogany desk while clearly outlining the escalating situation regarding the unauthorized financial drainage impacting my landscape design company. I handed over the original property deeds alongside the recent bank statements highlighting the extravagant purchases my brother had recently charged to the business account. I instructed him to immediately draft a formal sole proprietorship resolution intended to completely revoke all corporate credit card privileges currently held by Craig. Samuel carefully reviewed the official commercial documents before explaining the rigorous security protocols enforced by major financial institutions within the United States banking system. He emphasized the critical importance of executing precise legal paperwork to definitively prove my brother possessed absolutely no executive financial authority over the business accounts. By submitting properly notarized documents directly to the corporate banking division, we could effectively prevent Craig from successfully disputing the sudden termination of his spending limits. We spent the next hour verifying the exact balances on the supplementary accounts, ensuring every single financial avenue available to my brother was permanently sealed. He placed the freshly printed documents on the table while clarifying the strict corporate regulations governing our next steps. The bank will need this official resolution to cancel Craig's supplementary cards. We operate based on tax records, not self-appointed titles. After finalizing the financial security measures, we transitioned to addressing the residential property located on the commercial land currently occupied by Mom and Dad. I firmly expressed my intention to remove them from the company premises to completely sever the remaining ties, enabling their continuous emotional manipulation. Samuel leaned back in his leather chair to deliver a sobering reminder regarding the strict tenant rights actively enforced across the state of Florida. He thoroughly explained that removing family members from a property requires navigating complex housing regulations regardless of the deeply toxic personal dynamics driving the separation. Because they had established a primary residence at that specific address, the local authorities would require proper documentation to enforce any physical removal from the premises. Samuel warned me that initiating this formal eviction process would inevitably trigger an explosive reaction from my parents once the process server delivered the official documents. He pointed to a specific legal clause in the property statutes to ensure I fully understood the situation. Even though they haven't paid a single dime of rent in years under the law, they are still considered legal residents. A 30-day eviction notice is a mandatory procedure. Knowing the potential backlash from initiating such aggressive legal actions did not deter me from executing the necessary paperwork to reclaim my commercial property. I instructed my lawyer to utilize the most direct legal channels available to guarantee the removal process would not be delayed by any frivolous counterclaims. I grasped the heavy metal pen provided by Samuel while methodically reading through the dense legal terminology outlining the impending 30-day residential expulsion. Every single signature I placed on those formal documents represented another severed chain binding me to a family that viewed me entirely as a financial resource. I decisively signed my full legal name across the bottom of every single page without experiencing the slightest hesitation or feeling any lingering familial guilt. Handing the finalized documents back to Samuel effectively activated an irreversible legal barrier specifically designed to permanently protect my legitimate assets from further exploitation. Samuel immediately signaled his administrative assistant to begin processing the formal eviction notices through the local county court system to ensure absolute legal compliance. Leaving his office building that morning, I felt a profound sense of clarity knowing the impenetrable shield of the law now separated me from their toxic influence. At exactly 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, a piercing screech of expensive car tires echoed loudly outside the expansive glass doors of the landscape company reception area. Craig burst rapidly into the main corporate lobby, displaying an expression of absolute panic mixed with intense, unbridled rage across his flushed face. He marched directly toward the administrative sector before aggressively slamming the inactive corporate credit card onto the sleek wooden reception desk. He began shouting wildly at the terrified front desk coordinator, while demanding the accounting department instantly resolve what he assumed was a massive banking failure. He felt profoundly humiliated after the merchant payment terminal publicly declined his massive transaction while he was attempting to purchase an expensive custom wedding tuxedo. Suffering this immense financial embarrassment directly in front of his wealthy future-in-laws completely shattered the highly successful entrepreneur illusion he carefully maintained. He yelled fiercely at the administrative staff without showing any regard for professional workplace boundaries or basic human decency. "Fix this damn bank error immediately because they just declined my card at the tuxedo shop, which is absolutely unacceptable." I stepped calmly out of the primary executive office suite after hearing the escalating commotion violently disrupting the normal daily operations of my business. Maintaining a perfectly neutral facial expression, I walked deliberately across the marble floor to address his aggressive public tantrum without raising my own voice. I stood firmly behind the reinforced reception counter, projecting absolute authority while observing his frantic attempts to salvage his completely destroyed public image. I looked directly into his furious eyes before delivering the cold reality of his newly restricted financial situation in front of my employees. "I must inform you that there is absolutely no banking error occurring here because the legally binding corporate resolution has been officially enacted, meaning you no longer possess any authorization to utilize a single cent of my money." Craig completely lost his temper upon hearing my definitive statement permanently terminating his unauthorized access to my hard-earned wealth. He began screaming vicious insults across the lobby while desperately attempting to invoke his entirely fabricated executive title to command the administrative employees. He arrogantly ordered the senior accounting manager to bypass my authority, believing his fake status as the family representative still carried heavy weight within the commercial building. He paced frantically across the reception area, demanding immediate compliance from the very people who actually manage the real financial ledgers every single day. The entire office staff remained seated at their workstations in complete silence, staring at him with a heavy mixture of professional pity alongside utter confusion. Nobody moved a single inch to follow his frantic commands because they all knew exactly who signed their paychecks every 2 weeks. His complete lack of actual power became painfully obvious as his aggressive shouting echoed through a room full of people refusing to acknowledge his demands. Instead of engaging in a pointless physical altercation or an emotional screaming match, I utilized the standard corporate disciplinary protocols to handle the hostile intrusion. I calmly instructed the Human Resources Director to immediately draft an official incident report documenting his erratic behavior alongside the threatening verbal outbursts. I then signaled the private security personnel stationed near the main entrance to formally escort the disruptive intruder out of the commercial facility. The uniformed guards firmly grabbed his arms while dragging him toward the sliding glass doors, despite his loud protests regarding his familial status. He violently struggled against their grip while repeatedly threatening to destroy my reputation within the local Orlando business community. Before the automatic doors closed behind him, the lead security officer formally issued a strict trespass warning explicitly forbidding him from returning to the premises. Watching him stumble into the outdoor parking lot firmly cemented the permanent boundary protecting my professional environment from his toxic presence. At exactly 12 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the security camera system alerted me that Mom-Dad, alongside Natasha's entire family, were casually strolling through the VIP nursery area. The visiting family members were listening intently while Mom confidently fabricated an elaborate story detailing the massive business scale alongside the supposed astronomical profits single-handedly generated by Craig. She gestured proudly toward the expensive imported flora, attempting to convince the wealthy future-in-laws that her beloved son was a highly successful corporate visionary. Craig walked closely beside his fiancée, wearing a remarkably smug expression while absorbing the unearned admiration from her completely oblivious parents. They were aggressively selling a completely fraudulent narrative designed to permanently secure his position within their prestigious upper-middle-class social circle. Samuel and I walked purposefully down the gravel path to intercept the touring group precisely before they could reach the administrative buildings. Maintaining a completely professional demeanor suitable for a corporate attorney, Samuel approached the gathering without displaying any visible sarcasm or emotional hostility. He reached into his leather briefcase before extending a thick manila envelope containing the formal legal documents directly toward my deeply startled father. Dad stared blankly at the sealed package, instinctively recognizing the severity of receiving official paperwork delivered by a licensed legal representative in front of important guests. Samuel spoke with a calm, authoritative tone, leaving absolutely no room for any misinterpretation regarding the gravity of the ongoing situation. Good afternoon, sir. This is the official legal service regarding the absolute termination of your residential occupancy rights. So please carefully review the mandatory 30-day time frame explicitly stated on the enclosed residential eviction notice. The sudden mention of an eviction notice instantly shattered the carefully constructed, cheerful atmosphere surrounding the weekend botanical tour. I stepped forward to stand directly in front of Natasha's completely bewildered family, ensuring my posture radiated absolute ownership over the commercial territory. Ignoring the furious glares shooting from my parents, I decided to permanently dismantle the massive financial illusion they had maintained for so many years. I looked directly into the eyes of Natasha's father, delivering the devastating reality with a perfectly steady voice. I need to correct the actual facts to avoid any potential legal misunderstandings. Craig has never possessed any corporate shares or actual financial control within this company. Hearing that explicit declaration prompted Natasha's father to immediately launch a series of rapid-fire questions, demanding absolute clarity regarding the actual land deeds alongside the corporate registration. Craig suddenly turned incredibly pale while stammering completely incoherent sentences, attempting to desperately salvage his rapidly disintegrating reputation in front of his wealthy future father-in-law. Mom frantically tried to interject by claiming I was merely a disgruntled employee creating unnecessary drama, but her trembling voice entirely betrayed her desperate lies. The visiting patriarch possessed enough business acumen to recognize a massive financial fraud unfolding right before his eyes, despite their pathetic attempts at damage control. He demanded to see the actual property documents while pointing an accusatory finger directly at the man who had falsely promised his daughter a life of immense luxury. The undeniable truth finally washed over Natasha as she stared at her visibly panicking fiancé while processing the humiliating reality of living inside a massive lie for several years. She looked around the expansive commercial property, finally realizing that the person she previously treated like a lowly gardener actually owned the entire corporate empire. Overcome by a mixture of profound embarrassment alongside explosive anger, her entire family firmly demanded to leave the premises immediately without waiting for any further pathetic explanations. They turned their backs on my completely devastated relatives while marching aggressively toward the visitor parking lot to escape the deeply humiliating situation. Craig futilely chased after their departing vehicles, while Mom and Dad remained frozen among the expensive plants absorbing the permanent destruction of their fraudulent social masterpiece. On the Monday morning of the following week, the magnificent delusions regarding their luxurious upper-class lifestyle officially collapsed through a series of brutally humiliating scenes. The immediate consequences of my definitive legal actions cascaded violently through their daily routines, destroying every single fake privilege they had previously enjoyed at my personal expense. The protective barrier I provided for so long was entirely gone, leaving them fully exposed to their own financial incompetence. When Craig returned to his rented apartment, he stood completely frozen, watching professional movers systematically packing all of Natasha's personal belongings into large cardboard boxes. He desperately searched the completely empty living room looking for his fiancée before noticing the expensive diamond engagement ring left abandoned on the cold kitchen counter. Natasha had officially canceled the upcoming wedding without offering a single word of explanation, while leaving him to deal with the massive pending vendor deposits alone. Her sudden disappearance proved that her affection was entirely conditional, based upon the fraudulent wealth he proudly paraded around during their relationship. Later that exact same afternoon, my phone vibrated with frantic voicemails from Mom experiencing absolute panic after attempting to purchase expensive groceries at a local supermarket. She suffered severe public humiliation when the head cashier flatly declined her supplementary corporate credit card, while a long line of impatient customers watched her embarrassing ordeal. She yelled frantically into my voicemail inbox, demanding an immediate resolution to what she stubbornly believed was merely a temporary banking system failure. What exactly is going on with the card system? Because the supermarket cashier just declined my transaction in front of so many people, leaving me absolutely humiliated. The absolute terror in her trembling voice confirmed that she finally realized the limitless financial supply she previously exploited had evaporated forever. Simultaneously, Dad experienced his own severe financial nightmare after signing for a thick envelope delivered via certified mail directly from his primary personal lending institution. The official banking documents notified him that several major personal loans were now severely overdue because my automatic monthly transfer payments had permanently ceased operating. His previously flawless credit score was plummeting rapidly toward a disastrous rating, guaranteeing no legitimate financial institution would ever approve another loan application under his name. He spent the entire afternoon frantically calling various banking representatives, hoping to secure an emergency extension, but every single agent rejected his desperate pleas. The ultimate professional destruction occurred during a prestigious networking event hosted by the Central Orlando Landscaping Association later that same evening. Craig attempted to confidently approach a longtime commercial partner, hoping to secure a lucrative installation contract to artificially inflate his rapidly depleting personal bank accounts. The respected industry veteran publicly refused to shake his extended hand while staring at him with a look of profound disgust in front of several prominent corporate executives. Everyone in the grand banquet hall witnessed the massive public rejection, cementing his absolute downfall within the commercial landscaping industry. The influential contractor delivered a devastating verbal blow, officially signaling a complete boycott from the entire regional business community. I think we have absolutely nothing left to collaborate on, Craig, because the Orlando business circle is very small, meaning we only work with the person actually holding the legal contracts. Their entirely fabricated reputation was finally stripped away, leaving them completely exposed as financial parasites who relied exclusively on my relentless hard work. They permanently lost access to every single luxury privilege alongside the massive credit lines I had painfully funded for so many ungrateful years. The influential local business community completely severed all professional ties, ensuring neither Mom nor Dad could ever leverage the company name to secure future commercial loans. My decisive legal action successfully dismantled the deeply toxic financial ecosystem they constructed, allowing me to finally reclaim absolute ownership of my professional legacy. On the exact 30th day following the official delivery of the legal eviction notice, a relentless heavy rain engulfed the entire city of Orlando. I stood quietly beneath the expansive covered porch of the main administrative building, observing the final pathetic conclusion of their mandatory departure. Mom, Dad. Alongside Craig were struggling miserably through the freezing downpour while awkwardly loading soggy cardboard boxes into an incredibly cheap rented moving truck. The miserable scene unfolding directly before my eyes represented the absolute destruction of the luxurious lifestyle they had continuously stolen from my personal sacrifices. Their movements were incredibly sluggish, as the unforgiving weather completely ruined whatever remaining dignity they possessed during their humiliating exit from my commercial property. Before climbing into the damp driver's seat, Craig slowly approached the main security perimeter with heavily bloodshot eyes, desperately pleading for some undeserved leniency. He frantically attempted to utilize the sacred concept of family bloodlines to beg for just one additional week to organize their completely chaotic financial situation. Instead of feeling any misplaced emotional pity or delivering any harsh, vindictive remarks, I suddenly realized my mental core remained completely unaffected by his pathetic tears. Their profound psychological manipulation had entirely lost its toxic power over my mind, ensuring I would never again surrender my hard-earned wealth to their greed. I walked silently toward the perimeter line while maintaining perfect eye contact and firmly snatched the heavy metal gate keys directly from my father's trembling hand. Without uttering a single word of forgiveness, I decisively slammed the massive iron gate completely shut to permanently seal the physical boundary, protecting my independent future. I watched through the thick metal bars as the poorly maintained vehicle struggled to start, before finally pulling away from the commercial estate. The deafening sound of the heavy rain washing over the empty driveway effectively washed away the lingering toxicity they had brought into my professional sanctuary. My decision to prioritize my own mental stability over their parasitic demands officially closed the darkest chapter of my entire adult life. The official production team behind Revenge Mode firmly presents this narrative for crucial educational purposes, emphasizing the absolute necessity of maintaining personal boundaries. We specifically aim to highlight how approaching severe family crises through strict legal rationality effectively protects your long-term emotional well-being. Evaluating this complex situation objectively reveals the female protagonist executed a brilliantly decisive strategy to permanently sever all toxic familial connections. Her unapologetic final cutoff successfully insulated her legitimate financial achievements from their continuous systematic exploitation. The manipulative antagonists ultimately suffered the inevitable disastrous consequences generated entirely by their own fraudulent financial decisions. Analyzing this dramatic conflict provides several profound lessons regarding personal dignity and the enforcement of absolute boundaries. Blind loyalty and endless financial sacrifices will never generate genuine respect when your family deliberately treats your hard work as an easily exploitable mandatory obligation. Utilizing official legal mechanisms remains the only effective method to permanently stop the systematic financial extortion orchestrated by deeply manipulative relatives who refuse to change. Choosing to completely sever ties with toxic family members is a profoundly necessary act of basic self-preservation rather than an exhibition of unwarranted cruelty. Shared biological bloodlines only hold genuine value when they are actively accompanied by authentic mutual respect alongside a foundational level of basic human decency. We express our profound gratitude to the dedicated audience members who patiently followed this emotional journey until the very end. Completely cutting off toxic relatives requires immense psychological strength and unwavering courage during extreme vulnerability. How would you personally handle this situation if your own family attempted to exploit your success? Please share your insightful perspectives below and subscribe to our channel for more empowering stories.